Welcome to Globewise Entertainment. Today, we're taking you back in time to explore the 15 most bold movies of the 1950s, films that shocked audiences, pushed boundaries, and redefined Hollywood storytelling. From epic war dramas to daring romances, these movies weren't afraid to take risks, and their impact still resonates today. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, hit that subscribe button now, and don't forget to let us know in the comments which 1950s bold movie is your favorite. 15. The Moon is Blue, 1953. In 1953, The Moon is Blue shocked audiences by daring to discuss what Hollywood had long considered taboo: romance, flirtation, and sex, in plain, witty dialogue. Directed by Otto Preminger, this romantic comedy tells the story of a charming playboy who attempts to woo an independent young woman, only to find her resisting his advances, not because she lacks attraction, but because she has strong personal values. What made it truly bold? The film's frank references to virginity, seduction, and sexual desire sparked an uproar. The Motion Picture Production Code, which had tightly controlled on-screen morality, refused to grant it a seal of approval. Yet, Preminger released it anyway, and audiences flocked to see it. The result? Not only did it become a box office hit, but it also challenged Hollywood's censorship norms, paving the way for more open discussions of adult relationships in cinema. Today, The Moon is Blue is remembered as a trailblazer, an audacious comedy that proved a film could be both risque and commercially successful. Its legacy is clear. Hollywood's boundaries could be pushed, and audiences were ready for it. Fun fact: despite the controversy, Otto Preminger famously quipped, "The audience is smarter than the censors," and he proved it right. 14. Baby Doll, 1956. When you think of 1950s cinema, the image that usually comes to mind is neatly dressed families, wholesome romances, and safe melodramas. But Baby Doll broke all those rules, and Hollywood nearly broke in the process. Directed by Elia Kazan and written by Tennessee Williams, this film pushed the envelope on sexuality, desire, and raw human tension in a way that scandalized the nation. The story revolves around baby doll Megan, a 19-year-old bride who still sleeps in a crib, and her much older husband, along with the scheming cotton gin owner who sets his sights on her. What made audiences gasp wasn't just the plot. It was the way the film explored adult sexual tension, female desire, and marital power dynamics with unflinching honesty. The Motion Picture Production Code, Hays Code, nearly blocked its release, calling it morally offensive, and the Catholic Legion of Decency labeled it condemned. Yet, despite, or maybe because of, the controversy, Baby Doll became a cultural touchstone. It opened doors for more daring storytelling in Hollywood and forced audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about desire, manipulation, and societal expectations. Today, it's remembered not just as scandalous, but as a bold cinematic milestone that challenged an era's moral compass. Whether you see it as audacious, provocative, or brilliantly subversive, Baby Doll proves that the 1950s weren't as tame as history often makes them seem. 13. The Man with the Golden Arm, 1955. Coming in at number 13 is a film that shocked audiences and defied Hollywood taboos in the mid-1950s, The Man with the Golden Arm, directed by Otto Preminger and starring the legendary Frank Sinatra. This movie tackled a subject that was virtually unspoken in cinema at the time: drug addiction. Sinatra delivers a haunting performance as Frankie Machine, a recovering heroin addict struggling to escape his past and find normalcy. The film's raw portrayal of addiction, desperation, and human vulnerability was considered bold, even scandalous, by critics and censors alike. The mere depiction of drug use on screen risked censorship, yet Preminger refused to shy away from reality. The Man with the Golden Arm wasn't just daring in its subject matter, it also pushed stylistic boundaries. The jazzy, electrifying score by Elmer Bernstein mirrored the turmoil of Frankie's life, while the stark black and white cinematography emphasized the harsh, unforgiving world he inhabited. Despite its controversial theme, the film became a critical success, earning Academy Award nominations and cementing Frank Sinatra's reputation as a serious actor capable of portraying complex, troubled characters. More importantly, it opened doors for Hollywood to explore previously forbidden topics, paving the way for more mature storytelling in American cinema. This movie wasn't just entertainment, it was a cultural milestone, daring audiences to confront the uncomfortable truths lurking beneath suburban perfection. Fun fact for viewers: Sinatra was so committed to authenticity that he even researched real addicts to bring Frankie Machine's struggles to life, a level of dedication rarely seen in that era. 12. The Wild One, 1953. When The Wild One hit theaters in 1953, it didn't just make waves, it sparked a cultural revolution. Directed by Laszlo Benedek and starring a young Marlon Brando, this film became the ultimate symbol of teenage rebellion in post-war America. Brando's iconic leather jacket, tilted cap, and brooding stare instantly turned him into a legend and forever changed the image of the rebel without a cause. The story follows Johnny Strabler, the fearless leader of a motorcycle gang, as he rolls into a small town and challenges its authority, creating tension, chaos, and unforgettable drama. What made this film bold wasn't just the plot, it was the raw, unfiltered portrayal of youth disillusionment, anger, and defiance in a society still clinging to conservative norms. At the time, critics were divided, and some towns even banned the film, fearing it glorified delinquency. But audiences, especially the younger generation, loved it. The Wild One became more than a movie, it was a cultural milestone, influencing fashion, music, and the rebellious spirit of the 50s. Fun fact: Marlon Brando's line, "What are you rebelling against?" followed by "What ya got?" became one of the most quoted movie lines in history and a rallying cry for teenage defiance everywhere. If you think today's movies push boundaries, remember, it all started decades ago with films like this, bold, daring, and unforgettable. 11. The Big Heat, 1953. When film noir turned up the pressure. In the early 1950s, Hollywood crime films often hinted at corruption, but The Big Heat kicked the door down and dared audiences to look straight into it. Directed by the legendary Fritz Lang, this hard-boiled noir stars Glenn Ford as Detective Dave Banyan, a straight-arrow cop whose life is shattered after a routine investigation exposes a powerful crime syndicate. What begins as a police procedural quickly transforms into a relentless revenge story, fueled by moral outrage and emotional loss. What made The Big Heat so bold for its time wasn't just its violence, it was its attitude. This film refused to soften its punches. Corruption isn't hidden in shadows. It sits in offices, nightclubs, and City Hall. Banyan isn't a glamorous hero. He's obsessed, exhausted, and willing to cross lines to expose the truth. The film shocked 1950s audiences with moments that felt almost unthinkable for the era. Its most infamous scene, still discussed today, used sudden violence to send a chilling message. In this world, no one is safe. That moment alone redefined how brutality could be portrayed without excess, relying on implication and emotional impact rather than spectacle. Equally daring was Gloria Graham's performance as Debbie Marsh, a gangster's girlfriend who evolves from a sharp-tongued side character into the film's emotional core. In a decade when female roles were often decorative, Debbie's arc was tragic, defiant, and unforgettable, making her one of film noir's most complex characters. The Big Heat stood out in the 1950s because it challenged authority, questioned justice, and embraced moral ambiguity, all while staying within the strict limits of the production code. Its influence can be felt decades later in neo-noirs, revenge thrillers, and crime dramas that dared to blur the line between right and wrong. More than 70 years later, The Big Heat still burns with intensity. It's not just a crime film, it's a fearless statement about power, corruption, and the cost of standing alone. And that's exactly why it remains one of the boldest movies of the 1950s. 10. A Streetcar Named Desire. 1951. Step into the sultry, tense world of New Orleans in A Streetcar Named Desire, a film that boldly pushed the boundaries of 1950s Hollywood. Directed by Elia Kazan and based on Tennessee Williams' controversial stage play, this movie is an emotional roller coaster that explores desire, mental instability, and raw human vulnerability. Vivien Leigh stars as the fragile yet fiery Blanche DuBois, a woman whose genteel facade crumbles under the weight of her past and present struggles. Opposite her, Marlon Brando delivers a groundbreaking performance as Stanley Kowalski, the aggressive, primal force whose intensity shook audiences and redefined male acting in cinema. What made this film so daring for its time? A streetcar named Desire dared to confront taboo topics: sexual tension, domestic conflict, and psychological breakdowns. The passionate chemistry between Blanche and Stanley, combined with Brando's revolutionary method acting, challenged the strict moral codes of Hollywood and gave the film a raw, unforgettable edge. It wasn't just the story, it was the performances that made this movie legendary. Vivien Leigh earned an Oscar for Best Actress, and Marlon Brando became an icon, inspiring generations of actors to come. The film's unflinching exploration of human desire, desperation, and decay makes it one of the boldest and most influential films of the 1950s. If you think classic films were all polite and restrained, A Streetcar Named Desire will remind you that the 1950s had its own daring, scandalous, and unforgettable cinematic moments. 9. The Blackboard Jungle, 1955. In the mid-1950s, Hollywood wasn't ready for the kind of raw, unflinching look at teen rebellion that the Blackboard Jungle dared to deliver. This groundbreaking film, starring Glenn Ford as a dedicated high school teacher, shone a harsh light on the struggles of inner-city schools, unruly students, and the generational clash that had been simmering beneath the surface of post-war America. What made it truly bold? For the first time, the silver screen tackled juvenile delinquency head-on, portraying students as complex, sometimes violent, and deeply misunderstood. The movie didn't shy away from controversial themes like gang violence, racial tension, and the failures of the education system, sparking nationwide debates and even protests in some cities. And let's not forget the cultural impact. The film's use of Bill Haley and his Comets' Rock Around the Clock in the opening scene helped ignite the rock and roll craze in America. That wasn't just a soundtrack choice, it was a statement, connecting rebellious youth culture with a new sound that would define a generation. The Blackboard Jungle wasn't just a movie, it was a mirror reflecting the fears, hopes, and frustrations of 1950s youth. Bold, groundbreaking, and unapologetic ally real, it changed Hollywood forever and paved the way for countless films about teenage rebellion in the decades to come. If you haven't seen it yet, get ready to witness the drama, tension, and courage that made this film one of the boldest of its decade. 8. Suddenly, Last Summer, 1959. Hollywood in the 1950s was no stranger to controversy, but suddenly, Last Summer pushed the boundaries like few films before it. Directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and starring the incomparable Elizabeth Taylor, Katharine Hepburn, and Montgomery Clift, this psychological drama shocked audiences with its daring themes of mental illness, sexual desire, and family secrets. The story centers on Catherine Holly, Elizabeth Taylor, who witnesses a tragic event involving her cousin Sebastian, Montgomery Clift. When Catherine threatens to reveal the truth, her powerful Aunt Violet, Katharine Hepburn, resorts to extreme measures to silence her, exposing a twisted web of greed, manipulation, and forbidden desire. What made this film so bold for its time wasn't just its intense performances, it was the taboo subjects it addressed. Homosexuality, hinted at in Sebastian's life, and the suggestion of sexual exploitation were almost unheard of in mainstream cinema. The movie's dark, claustrophobic atmosphere and sharp dialogue earned it both critical acclaim and whispers of scandal. Despite, or perhaps because of, the controversy, suddenly, Last Summer became a landmark film, earning multiple Academy Award nominations and proving that Hollywood could tackle adult themes with sophistication and intensity. For modern viewers, it remains a striking example of 1950s boldness, a film unafraid to challenge social norms while delivering powerhouse performances that still resonate today. Which shocking moment in this classic left you speechless? Comment below. 7. The Night of the Hunter, 1955. Prepare to step into the shadowy world of The Night of the Hunter, a 1955 thriller that was decades ahead of its time. Directed by Charles Laughton, this dark masterpiece mixes suspense, horror, and social commentary in ways that shocked 1950s audiences. What made it bold?
Where's the money hid?
The film centers on a sinister preacher-turned-murderer, played chillingly by Robert Mitchum, who hunts down two children for their father's hidden fortune. For the conservative 1950s, this story of psychological terror, child endangerment, and evil cloaked in righteousness was daringly provocative. Its stark black and white cinematography, expressionistic lighting, and haunting imagery pushed the boundaries of what Hollywood could depict on screen. Though it wasn't a commercial hit at the time, critics now hail it as a groundbreaking classic, influencing generations of filmmakers with its unique visual storytelling and morally complex narrative. It's a bold, unforgettable exploration of fear, innocence, and the darkness that can hide behind a smile. Fun fact, the film's stylized approach was so unusual that some viewers at the time thought it looked more like a dark fairy tale than a thriller, a risk that paid off for its lasting legacy. 6. The Defiant Ones, 1958. Coming in at number 6, The Defiant Ones is a landmark film that dared to tackle race relations in a time when Hollywood often shied away from controversy. Directed by Stanley Kramer, this gripping drama follows two escaped convicts, played brilliantly by Tony Curtis and Sidney Poitier, chained together as they struggle to survive and navigate their mutual distrust. What makes The Defiant Ones truly bold for the 1950s isn't just its tense storytelling. It's how it confronted America's racial prejudices head-on. Seeing a black and a white actor share equal screen presence and emotional depth was groundbreaking, challenging audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about society. The film earned critical acclaim, racking up multiple Academy Award nominations, including Best Actor nods for both Curtis and Poitier. Beyond awards, its cultural impact was profound. It sparked conversations about equality and justice at a time when such discussions were still taboo in mainstream cinema. The Defiant Ones isn't just a thrilling escape story, it's a daring social statement, making it one of the most courageous films of the 1950s. Fun fact, Sidney Poitier's performance helped pave the way for more leading roles for black actors in Hollywood, breaking barriers that had existed for decades. 5. The Searchers, 1956. One of the most audacious films of the 1950s, The Searchers redefined the Western genre forever. Directed by the legendary John Ford and starring the iconic John Wayne, this film wasn't just another cowboy story, it dared to tackle dark themes of obsession, racism, and moral ambiguity that most films of the decade avoided. Set against the breathtaking landscapes of Monument Valley, the story follows Ethan Edwards, John Wayne, a Civil War veteran, on a relentless quest to rescue his kidnapped niece. While audiences initially expected a classic hero's journey, Ford shocked viewers by presenting a protagonist who was deeply flawed, stubborn, and at times morally troubling, challenging the traditional Hollywood hero archetype. The film's boldness didn't stop at its story. Its unflinching portrayal of violence, psychological tension, and complex racial themes pushed the boundaries of what 1950s cinema dared to show. The Searchers wasn't just a movie, it was a statement, a mirror reflecting the darker sides of human nature, wrapped in sweeping cinematography and unforgettable performances. Even decades later, The Searchers continues to inspire filmmakers worldwide, from Star Wars to No Country for Old Men, proving that bold storytelling never goes out of style. Fun fact, despite its 1956 release, modern critics often call Ethan Edwards one of the most complex anti-heroes in cinema history, long before anti-heroes became mainstream. For East of Eden, 1955. James Dean's explosive Hollywood debut. When it comes to boldness in 1950s cinema, Elia Kazan's adaptation of John Steinbeck's East of Eden stands as a milestone. Released in 1955, the film didn't just push narrative boundaries, it shattered expectations for how raw emotion could be portrayed on the big screen. At the heart of the film is James Dean, in his first major feature role, delivering a performance that was electric, rebellious, and dangerously captivating. Playing Cal Trask, Dean embodied the angst, jealousy, and yearning of a young man struggling under the shadow of his father. His on-screen intensity was unlike anything audiences had seen before, and it helped cement his status as a cultural icon and a symbol of teenage rebellion. The film was bold in other ways too. Its exploration of family tension, moral ambiguity, and forbidden desires was daring for its era, touching on themes that Hollywood studios often shied away from. Kazan's direction was fearless, capturing the inner turmoil of each character with a psychological depth that was groundbreaking for the 1950s. But the real shocker? The emotional vulnerability and rawness that Dean brought to his role. Scenes of confrontation, love, and heartbreak were filmed with an intimacy that made audiences feel like intruders in a private world. It wasn't just a movie, it was an experience, one that left viewers both mesmerized and unsettled. East of Eden wasn't just a film, it was a cultural lightning bolt. It boldly signaled a new era of Hollywood realism, paving the way for more daring performances and stories in cinema. For anyone exploring the most daring and transformative films of the 1950s, this James Dean classic is an essential, unforgettable landmark. 3. Some Like It Hot, 1959. When it comes to breaking boundaries in 1950s Hollywood, Some Like It Hot wasn't just bold, it was revolutionary. Directed by the legendary Billy Wilder and starring Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, and Jack Lemmon, this screwball comedy pushed the limits of humor, gender roles, and the moral codes of its time. The plot follows two struggling musicians, Joe and Jerry, who accidentally witness a mob hit. To escape the killers, they disguise themselves as women and join an all-female band, only to find themselves competing for the affection of the charming Sugar Cane, played by the iconic Marilyn Monroe. The result? Chaos, romance, and a groundbreaking exploration of identity and attraction. At a time when the Hollywood production code strictly monitored content, the film dared to feature cross-dressing, sexual innuendos, and open commentary on gender fluidity, all wrapped in a hilarious and charming package. Its infamous closing line, delivered by Joe as he reveals his true identity, well, nobody's perfect, still resonates as one of cinema's most daring comedic moments. Some Like It Hot didn't just entertain, it challenged societal norms, proved that comedy could be fearless, and cemented its place as a timeless classic. Even decades later, it remains a masterclass in blending bold storytelling with irresistible charm. Fun fact, the movie was so audacious for its era that censors initially struggled with how to rate it, but audiences adored it, making it one of the highest-grossing films of 1959. 2. Rebel Without a Cause, 1955. When it comes to cinematic rebellion, few films capture teenage angst and social tension like Rebel Without a Cause. Directed by Nicholas Ray, this iconic 1955 classic catapulted James Dean into the cultural stratosphere, turning him into the ultimate symbol of youthful defiance. The film boldly addressed themes that were considered taboo at the time: alienation, parental neglect, and the struggles of adolescence in post-war America. Dean's portrayal of Jim Stark, a troubled teenager seeking identity and understanding in a world that seems cold and indifferent, resonated deeply with audiences. The raw emotion and vulnerability he brought to the role made viewers confront the real issues of youth rebellion, something Hollywood had often sanitized. But Rebel Without a Cause wasn't just about teen turmoil. It pushed the boundaries of morality and family dynamics on screen. Scenes depicting domestic conflict, juvenile delinquency, and the consequences of peer pressure were revolutionary for the 1950s, making adults uneasy and teenagers see their own frustrations reflected honestly. The film's boldness also came from its style. Nicholas Ray's use of deep-focus cinematography and the iconic red jacket of James Dean visually captured the intensity and isolation of youth. Coupled with a powerful supporting cast, including Natalie Wood and Sal Mineo, the story became a timeless exploration of identity, rebellion, and the human need for connection. Even decades later, Rebel Without a Cause continues to influence filmmakers and inspire discussions about teenage struggles, making it one of the most daring and culturally significant movies of the 1950s. Fun fact for viewers: James Dean tragically died just months after filming, cementing his status as an eternal icon of rebellion. 1. The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957. When it comes to bold filmmaking in the 1950s, The Bridge on the River Kwai stands tall, both literally and figuratively. Directed by David Lean, this war epic pushed the boundaries of storytelling with its unflinching portrayal of the psychological and moral struggles of POWs during World War II. The film centers on British soldiers forced by the Japanese to build a railway bridge in the heart of Burma. What makes it bold is its complex moral dilemma. Colonel Nicholson, played by the legendary Alec Guinness, becomes obsessed with proving the superiority of British engineering, even at the expense of aiding the enemy. This wasn't your typical black and white hero story of the era. It explored the gray areas of pride, duty, and survival, topics that were daring for 1950s Hollywood. Audiences were captivated not just by the intense drama but also by the breathtaking cinematography and massive production scale, which included constructing an actual bridge over a river in Sri Lanka. The film went on to win 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director, cementing its place as a cinematic masterpiece that challenged audiences' perceptions of heroism and morality. The Bridge on the River Kwai isn't just a war film, it's a bold exploration of human pride, endurance, and the moral cost of ambition, making it one of the most daring movies of the 1950s. Fun fact: the iconic whistling march composed by Malcolm Arnold became a global sensation and is instantly recognizable even today. That's a wrap on our journey through the 15 most bold movies of the 1950s. These films didn't just entertain, they challenged audiences, redefined storytelling, and left a lasting mark on cinema history. If you haven't subscribed to Globewise Entertainment yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button now so you never miss our deep dives into the most fascinating movies of all time. And tell us in the comments, which 1950s bold movie is your favorite? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video and share it with fellow movie lovers.